I'm Claire Shaeffer. I graduated with honors from a trade technical school where I learned construction techniques for the cheapest and most expensive designs. I taught college-level courses for more than 20 years. I collect vintage and not-so-vintage fashions, which I use for research, and I frequently write about the designs in my collection. I've visited dozens of couture workrooms, factories, and fashion exhibitions, and I have a vast collection of photographs, which I use for my YouTube videos. Today, I selected a few details from earlier videos to give you some idea of what to expect. For full disclosure, I am the author of more than 25 books. My books include the only books on couture sewing and couture tailoring, and the only book on ready-to-wear techniques. Most of my books can be purchased online. If they are new, I receive a royalty. If used, I don't. These 3 books are currently in print. Why am I a YouTuber? The most important reason is that I love teaching, and I particularly enjoy writing about techniques that have not been described before. I also have a lot of information and photos which would not fit into a specific book. I might add that my YouTube channel is a way to meet new people who share the love of sewing. My style is straightforward and sometimes terse, so you can quickly return to your busy lifestyle. This video focuses on some of the Chanels in my collection. Fabricated in a Glen plaid, sometimes called the Prince of Wales plaid, this Chanel jacket is from 1960. It has a panel front, but the seam has been moved a small amount toward the neckline. The jacket has handmade thread buttonholes. It is trimmed with self fabric on the pockets and vents. This jacket was photographed in Vogue, March 15, 1964. It has a panel front. The seam is next to the neckline, and the side front is cut with the printed seam on grain, then shaped inconspicuously. It has double buttonholes. The black buttons are different, but they are original. A very narrow wool tubing wraps the edging of the jacket. This is the earliest jacket I have with quilting and a 3-piece sleeve. Chanel jackets are frequently described as boxy because they look boxy on the hanger, and the cheap copies are boxy. But as you can see, this jacket has a nice shape. In this video, I compare the jackets from an original haute couture suit and an authorized copy, which was sold at Lord & Taylor. The Chanel on the left was made for a specific customer. The copy is a standard ready-to-wear size. The ready-to-wear suit cost about $300, while the original Chanel would have cost about 10 times as much. Both jackets have detachable cotton collars. The suit collars hug the neck at the upper edge, but a closer look shows some differences. The couture collar is shaped to fit the neck. The ready-to-wear collar is cut to fit the neck. The detachable collars have been removed. The Chanel is completely lined with silk. The edges of the silk and the seams at the shoulder and armholes have been sewn by hand. Only the vertical seams on the lining are machine stitched. The copy has a rayon lining and self-fabric facings on the front and collar. All the seams on the copy are machine stitched. This video focuses on an incredible Chanel jacket. The jacket has bound or fabric buttonholes and buttons with the star motif. The buttonhole welts were made of brocade, then the gilt braid was hand sewn over the welts. This dress and jacket are from the early 1960s. The fabric is a lightweight metallic brocade. The suit is in excellent condition with little sign of wear. Some people might consider the design old-fashioned, but it has several interesting sewing and design details which could be adapted for a more modern design. There is a separate video about the dress, so I can show you the details on the inside. The edges at the neckline and armholes are finished with silk gauze pipings. The gilt braid at the neck and armholes is only 3/16 inches wide. Two braids are first sewn together, then they are sewn to the dress with short running stitches. Camp was an exhibition in 2019 at the Metropolitan Art Museum. Perhaps the most famous camp design, this paper dress was inspired by Andy Warhol's painting of a Campbell's soup can. This Lanvin Castillo dress from 1956 is made of synthetic tulle. This video focuses on the Vivian Westwood exhibition at the Fine Arts Museum of San Francisco in 2007. The drape designs throughout the exhibition were particularly interesting. This dress has a simple drape at the waist. From the mid-1990s, this knit pattern and the detail at the neck were taken from a Liberty print fabric. Notice that the pattern of the knit is knitted from left side to the right instead of vertically. From beginning to end, Vivian Westwood was anti-establishment, anti-design, and anti-fashion. Her fashions were always unique and frequently represented her opinion on social issues such as climate change and fracking. Westwood died on December 29, 2022. This video highlights a few of the designs in the 2005 exhibition Chanel at the Met. Considered the first braid-trimmed suit, this 1960 jacket was inspired by a Tyrolean jacket. The jacket was worn by Chanel's friend, the photographer Horst. Fabricated in wool boucle and trimmed with navy braids and gilt buttons, the jacket has double buttonholes that are handmade, navy thread buttonholes on the braid, and ivory lining fabric on the inside. The double buttonhole is used on Chanel designs when the facing or lining is a contrast color or fabric. This double buttonhole is from a Chanel suit in my collection. The thread buttonhole on the outside was made by hand. The buttonhole lining is a faux bound buttonhole that matches the lining. The Coromandel Evening Ensemble was inspired by the Coromandel screens in Chanel's apartment. The silk organza coat was embroidered with black, gold, and red sequins and bronze seed beads in a chinoiserie motif. This video focuses on the contemporary fabric designs of Jacqueline Groag. Groag was born in Prague. After the Nazis invaded Czechoslovakia in 1939, she and her husband fled to Britain, where they were welcomed by the members of the British Design Factory. She was a prodigious and influential designer to the end of her life. This stunning dress is fabricated in a charming rayon print from 1946. Inspired by nature, this bold print features an imaginative use of color. Many people think couture construction is difficult, and yes, some techniques are, but most are quite easy. In this video, I have selected a few which you can incorporate in your everyday sewing, as well as for garments in your wardrobe. To mark bias, Begin by marking the grain line with pins parallel to the selvage. Place a ruler or meter stick next to the row of pins. Place an isosceles right triangle next to the straight edge. Mark the bias on the slant edge of the triangle. Elastic in a thread casing is one of my favorite techniques. Begin with the braided elastic that narrows when stretched. Pin the unstretched elastic to the garment. Use catch stitches to make a thread casing over the elastic, working carefully to avoid stitching on the elastic. When finished, pull up the elastic the desired amount, trim the ends, and sew them securely to the garment. Cover the elastic ends with overcasting, ribbon, or lightweight silk. This stunning design is from the mid-1880s, and it's part of an online exhibition on the website of the Museum of the City of New York. In this video, I focus on the dress, its design, the fabric, and some construction details. The seams were pressed open and clipped to lie flat. The corners were trimmed to reduce curling, and the edges were overcast by hand. The double piping finishes the lower edge of the bodice. The skirt was designed to showcase the bobbin lace. This elegant dress is also in the collection at the Museum of the City of New York. The edges of the collar ruffles were cut with small scallops and left unfinished. The pleated belt is fastened under the bow. The bodice was underlined and has 7 stays. The silk casings for the stays were sewn to the seam allowances by hand with short back stitches. This dress is also in the collection at the Museum of the City of New York. It is probably the earliest work design in the United States. At first glance, the velvet appears to be 2 shades of coral. It is actually only 1 shade. The loops of the velvet were cut by hand to create the darker flowers. The lighter flowers were left uncut. In this detail, you can see the double piping on the outside and the way it was finished on the wrong side. Look carefully and you can see the lino weave of the silk gauze fabric. This video focuses on some interesting jacket details. Couture tailoring encompasses many elements. First and foremost, the garments are designed and custom-made to fit the clients who order them, and the garments are made by hand. Some jackets, like the Yves Saint Laurent, are inspired by men's tailoring, while others, like the Chanel, are more feminine. Made by hand does not mean that there is no machine stitching. Instead, it describes the thousands of hand stitches used to shape the individual sections throughout the construction and on the finished garment. If you don't have a dress form to shape the shoulder pads, you can use a pressing cushion or your ham. In this video, I show you some techniques and explain how couture differs from traditional home sewing techniques. At first glance, this Balenciaga jacket is just a pretty feminine design from the 1960s. It has a notch collar, bound buttonholes, and 3/4 length sleeves. When you hold the collar up, you can see this fabulous technique for perfect collar corners. This is the only jacket on which I have seen this technique. However, there are many couture techniques which begin with wrong sides together. This Dior jacket was fabricated in a metallic brocade. A home sewing or ready-to-wear pattern would have had a separate facing pattern for the front edge. Instead, the Dior has an extended facing with the dart at the bottom. An organza stay was sewn to the fold line on the wrong side to prevent the edge from stretching. I've also made a few short videos which are less than a minute long. They include an Ungaro camisole, a beaded jacket, and a $25 Chanel. And for something different, there are 2 short videos on Stephen Burrows, the inventor of lettuce edging, and a Christian Dior lace design with a special slip. I'm Claire Shaeffer. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed this brief look at some of my videos and join my channel.